The hum of Dean's car engine vibrates through my bones as I stare out the passenger window, watching familiar suburban streets blur past in the darkness. My jersey clings to my back, still damp with sweat from practice, and the leather seat beneath me feels warm against my skin. We've driven this route 100 times before, maybe more. The same cracked asphalt, the same flickering streetlight at Maple and 3rd, the same row of identical houses with their porch lights casting weak yellow pools on empty driveways. But tonight something is different. I can feel it in the way Dean grips the steering wheel, his knuckles pale against the black leather. His usual easy chatter has dissolved into silence, and the space between us feels charged with something I can't name. The radio plays softly, some generic pop song that neither of us is really hearing. I find myself stealing glances at his profile in the dashboard's green glow. Without warning, Dean yanks the wheel to the right. Gravel crunches beneath the tires as we roll onto the shoulder of the road, coming to a stop between two streetlights where the darkness feels thick and complete. The engine continues its steady rumble, and I can hear my own heartbeat pulsing in my ears. Headlights from a passing car sweep across our windshield, illuminating Dean's face for just a moment before plunging us back into shadow. I turn toward him, opening my mouth to ask what's wrong, but the words never come. Dean's hand shoots out across the center console, fingers wrapping around my wrist with a suddenness that makes me gasp. His grip is firm, but not violent, desperate rather than aggressive, as if he's holding me in place not just physically, but in time itself. His thumb presses against my pulse point, and I wonder if he can feel how frantically my heart is beating. The gesture lingers far longer than it should. In a normal world, the world where we're just teammates giving each other rides home from practice, this would last maybe a second. A quick grab for attention, a playful punch to the arm, something casual and forgettable. But this stretches on, becoming something else entirely. His fingers are warm against my skin, and I can feel the slight tremor in his hand that he's trying to hide. I should pull away. I should make some joke about him being weird, laugh it off, restore the balance between us that I've spent months carefully maintaining. Instead, I sit perfectly still, afraid that any movement might shatter whatever fragile thing is happening in the space between us. The smell of asphalt and cooling sweat mingles with the faint scent of Dean's cologne, something woody and clean that I've memorized without meaning to. Dean's breathing has changed. It's shallow now, careful, like he's trying not to disturb the air around us. His eyes are fixed straight ahead through the windshield, but I can see him in my peripheral vision, the way his jaw is clenched tight, the way his free hand flexes against his thigh. There's something raw in his expression, something exposed that I've never seen before, not in all our years of friendship. A truck rumbles past us, its headlights briefly flooding the car with harsh white light before fading back to darkness. In that moment of illumination, Dean looks at me directly for the first time since we stopped. His eyes are wide, almost frightened, and I see something there that makes my chest tight. It's the look of someone standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing they have to jump, but terrified of the fall. My wrist burns where his fingers circle it, not with pain, but with awareness, with the sudden, overwhelming knowledge that this touch means something, that we've crossed some invisible line we can never uncross. I think about all the times he's given me rides home, all the comfortable silences and easy conversations, all the moments when his hand brushed mine reaching for the radio, or when our shoulders touched as we walked into the gym together. Were those accidents, or were they leading to this? The silence stretches between us like a taut wire, ready to snap at any moment. I want to say something, anything to break the tension that's building in the small space of the car. But I'm afraid that words will ruin whatever this is, will force us to name it, and in naming it, destroy it. Because once something is spoken, it becomes real, and real things have consequences. Dean's thumb moves against my wrist, just the slightest pressure, and I feel it like electricity shooting up my arm. His grip loosens slightly, but he doesn't let go. If anything, his touch becomes more gentle, more deliberate, like he's memorizing the feel of my skin beneath his fingers. I wonder if this is what drowning feels like, this sensation of being pulled under by something stronger than yourself. I think about tomorrow, about practice, about how we'll have to look each other in the eye and pretend this never happened. About how Dean will probably make jokes with the other guys. Maybe even about girls he's thinking of asking out, and I'll have to smile and nod and act like my world hasn't shifted on its axis. About how I'll lie in my narrow dorm bed and replay this moment over and over, searching for meaning in every second, every breath, every heartbeat. But that's tomorrow. Right now, there's only this. Dean's hand on my wrist, the hum of the engine, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air between us. Right now, there's the possibility that I'm not alone in feeling this pull, this magnetic force that's been growing stronger every day. Right now, there's the terrifying hope that maybe, just maybe, he feels it too. Something has shifted between us, something fundamental and irreversible. Neither of us can name it yet. Neither of us is brave enough to speak it into existence. But it's there, alive and breathing in the darkness of the car, waiting to see what we'll do with it, waiting to see if we'll run from it or finally stop pretending we don't feel the gravity pulling us together. 2 days have passed since that moment on the roadside, and I've replayed it so many times it feels like a fever dream. Was his hand really on my wrist that long, or have I stretched those seconds into minutes in my memory? Did his thumb really move against my pulse, or is that something I've invented to torture myself with? I'm 20 years old, a college sophomore who should be focused on midterms and maintaining my spot on the basketball team. But instead, I find myself staring at my wrist during lectures, seeing phantom fingerprints where Dean touched me. My life has always been built on structure, on the safe predictability of routines. Morning runs at 6, classes until 3, practice until 6, dinner in the dining hall with whatever teammates happen to be there, then back to my cramped dorm room to study until my eyes burn. My roommate Marcus thinks I'm the most disciplined person he knows. He's told me this repeatedly, usually while I'm sitting at my desk with textbooks spread around me like a fortress, working through problem sets while he plays video games on his bed. Marcus is loud and social, the kind of person who makes friends in checkout lines and gets invited to parties by people he's known for 5 minutes. He's also straight in the way that only comes naturally, the way I've learned to perform but never quite feel. The basketball team is my anchor, the place where I make sense. I'm not the star player, not the one the crowd chants for, or the one who gets interviewed after games. I'm steady, reliable, the kind of teammate who never misses drills and always knows where everyone else should be on the court. Coach Jenkins calls me his safety net, and I've built my identity around being dependable, unproblematic, invisible in all the ways that matter. Then there's Dean. Dean, who is everything I'm not, and everything I watch when I think no one is looking. He's 21, our point guard, the gravitational center of every room he enters. When Dean laughs, everyone else starts smiling before they even know what's funny. When he talks strategy in the huddle, even the seniors lean in to listen. He has this effortless way of belonging that I've studied like a foreign language I'll never quite master. Off the court, Dean is known for his charm, for the way girls gravitate toward him at parties I never attend. I've heard the stories secondhand, filtered through locker room conversations I pretend not to listen to. Sarah from his communications class. Jessica, who works at the campus bookstore. Names that change, but the pattern never does. Dean collects admirers the way some people collect souvenirs, casually and without much thought. But with me, things have always been different. Our friendship exists in the quiet spaces between the noise of team dinners and group study sessions. It lives in car rides that stretch longer than they need to, in comfortable silences that feel more intimate than any conversation I've had with anyone else. It lives in the way Dean remembers that I don't like mushrooms on pizza, and how he automatically tosses me the keys to his car when the team goes somewhere together, trusting me to drive while he sprawls in the passenger seat. I've learned to navigate these moments carefully, to accept his casual intimacy while never acknowledging what it does to me. When he falls asleep on long road trips with his head tilted toward my shoulder, I focus on the road ahead and ignore the way my heart speeds up. When he stays late in the gym, just the two of us shooting free throws in companionable silence, I tell myself it doesn't mean anything beyond friendship. The truth I carry around is a constant weight in my chest. I know what I feel, have known it for months now, maybe longer. But knowing and acknowledging are different countries, and I've built my borders carefully. I've convinced myself that silence is survival, that the space between wanting and having could be a safe place to live if you're careful enough. Around Dean, though, silence becomes both sanctuary and torture. Every shared moment feels simultaneously like enough and like agony. I catalog the details without meaning to. The way his voice gets softer when it's just us. The way he fidgets with his class ring when he's thinking. The way he looks at me sometimes, like he's trying to figure out a puzzle he can't quite solve. In my dorm room at night, I sketch these moments in the margins of my notebooks. Not drawing Dean exactly, but fragments. Hands on a steering wheel. The curve of a shoulder. The shadow someone's profile makes against a car window. Marcus has commented on my doodling, called it artistic, but he doesn't look close enough to see what I'm really drawing. He doesn't see that every sketch is trying to capture something I can't name. The worst part is the hope. Despite everything I know about Dean, about his reputation, about the impossibility of the situation, there's a part of me that wonders, that looks for signs in every interaction, that reads meaning into moments that probably mean nothing, that remembers the weight of his hand on my wrist and dares to think maybe, just maybe, I'm not the only one feeling this pull. But hope is dangerous when you're 20 and learning that wanting someone can rewrite your entire understanding of yourself. Hope makes you pay attention to things you should ignore, makes you linger in doorways and extend conversations past their natural endpoints. Hope makes you vulnerable in ways that feel both necessary and terrifying. So I continue my routines, maintain my careful distance, and pretend that the shift I felt in Dean's car was just my imagination. I show up to practice on time, keep my grades up, and smile at Marcus's girlfriend when she visits our room. I perform normalcy while my real life happens in stolen moments and sideways glances, in the space between what is and what might be possible. A week passes before Dean approaches me again. 7 days of careful distance, of nodding hello in the hallways, and keeping our interactions limited to basketball and nothing more. I've almost convinced myself that I imagined the electricity in his car, that the weight of his hand on my wrist was just the product of my overactive imagination and too many sleepless nights. Then, after Thursday practice, everything changes. I'm toweling off by my locker when I hear Dean's voice cutting through the usual post-practice chatter. He's talking to Jake and Tommy, something about who's driving whom home, and I'm only half listening until I hear my name. Dean says he'll give me a ride, and before I can object, before I can mention that I was planning to catch the bus or walk or do literally anything else, Jake is nodding and heading toward the exit. Tommy claps Dean on the shoulder and follows. Just like that, it's decided for me. I want to protest, to insist I don't need a ride, but Dean is already pulling his keys from his gym bag with that casual confidence that makes arguing feel impossible. Besides, what would I say? That I can't be alone with him because of what happened last week? That being in his car feels too dangerous, too loaded with possibility. So I grab my backpack and follow him to the parking lot, my heart already starting that familiar rapid rhythm that seems to happen whenever we're alone together. The evening air is cool against my still warm skin, and I can smell the faint scent of autumn in the air, leaves beginning to turn, and the first hint of winter approaching. Dean's car looks the same as always, dark blue and slightly beat up, with a small dent in the passenger door that he got from a parking mishap freshman year. But as I slide into the passenger seat, the space feels different. Smaller somehow, more intimate, like the walls have moved closer together in the week since I was last here. Dean starts the engine and pulls out of the parking lot. And for the first few minutes, everything seems normal. He talks about practice, about coach's new defensive strategy, about how Tommy needs to work on his free throws. Safe topics, basketball topics, the kind of conversation we've had 100 times before. But then something shifts. Dean starts talking about other things, deeper things, his voice taking on that softer quality that only emerges when it's just the two of us. He mentions his father, how disappointed he was when Dean chose communications as his major instead of business. He talks about graduation, about how everyone expects him to have his life figured out when really he feels more lost than ever. I listen, startled by this rare vulnerability. Dean is usually so confident, so sure of himself, that hearing him admit to uncertainty feels like being trusted with something precious. I want to tell him that I understand, that I feel just as directionless despite my careful routines and structured life. But instead, I just listen, offering occasional murmurs of agreement and letting his words fill the space between us. That's when Dean misses the turn of my apartment. At first, I think it's an accident, that he's distracted by our conversation and simply forgot to turn left at the familiar intersection. But when I point it out, Dean just glances at me and says he knows. "You want to drive for a while?" he says. "Just drive." My pulse quickens as we continue past the campus boundaries, past the strip malls and chain restaurants that mark the edge of our college town. The road stretches ahead of us, dark asphalt disappearing into the night, and I realize I have no idea where we're going. More unsettling, I realize I don't care. Dean drives us onto a stretch of quiet country road I've never seen before. There are no street lights here, just the white beam of his headlights cutting through the darkness ahead. Fields stretch out on both sides of us, invisible except for the occasional glimpse of a fence post or the silhouette of a barn in the distance. The radio plays softly some late-night station that specializes in songs I've never heard, but that somehow fit the mood perfectly. Neither of us speaks. The comfortable silence that has always existed between us settles over the car like a blanket, but underneath it, I can feel something else building. Anticipation, maybe, or possibility. The sense that we're traveling towards something, not just away from our usual destinations. I steal glances at Dean's profile in the dashboard light. His jaw is relaxed now, no longer carrying the tension I noticed in the parking lot. His fingers drum absently against the steering wheel, and I find myself memorizing the rhythm, storing it away with all the other small details I collect about him. When we finally turn around and head back toward campus, something has changed between us again. I can't name it exactly, but I can feel it in the air of the car, in the way Dean's breathing has deepened, in the way he takes the long route back to my apartment instead of the direct one. As he pulls up in front of my building, Dean turns to look at me directly for the first time all evening. In the pale light from the parking lot, his eyes look darker than usual, more serious. He doesn't say anything, but I feel the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. That night, I lie in my narrow dorm bed listening to Marcus snore softly in the bed across the room, but sleep doesn't come. I keep thinking about the detour, about the way Dean said he just wanted to drive, about how the simple act of missing a turn had felt like crossing a threshold, like stepping into some new territory where the rules of our friendship no longer applied. I think about how he looked at me before I got out of the car, like he was trying to memorize my face. And I wonder if tomorrow he'll offer to drive me home again, if this was a one-time thing or the beginning of something I'm not brave enough to name. The detour becomes routine, not immediately and not obviously, but with the kind of gradual inevitability that makes you wonder how things were ever different. Dean starts offering me rides home after every practice, and I stop making excuses about taking the bus or walking. The other teammates don't comment, probably assume it's just convenient since we live in the same general direction, but I know better. I know that Dean drives past 3 other guys who live closer to me just to ask if I need a ride. The drives themselves transform too. What started as transportation becomes something else entirely, something I don't have words for yet. Dean develops habits I begin to memorize without meaning to. He adjusts his rearview mirror whenever I get in the car, tilting it just slightly even though it doesn't need adjusting. He drums his fingers against the steering wheel when he's nervous, always the same pattern, thumb to pinky and back again. And he's nervous more often now, though I can't figure out why. Our conversations drift away from basketball, away from the safe territory of classes and teammates and weekend plans. Instead, we talk about childhood memories, about the books we read when we thought no one was watching, about dreams that feel too fragile to voice in daylight. Dean tells me about the year his parents almost divorced, how he spent weeks sleeping on his grandmother's couch because home felt too unstable. I find myself sharing things I've never told anyone, like how I used to hide in the library during lunch in high school, because sitting alone in the cafeteria felt too exposed. These conversations happen in the dark cocoon of his car, insulated from the rest of the world by glass and metal and the steady hum of the engine. Sometimes we drive for an hour before he drops me off, taking back roads through neighborhoods I didn't know existed, past farms and forests that seem impossibly far from our college campus. Other times we sit parked outside my building for 30 minutes after the engine has gone quiet, talking in voices so low they're barely above whispers. I start carrying a notebook with me everywhere, not for classes, but for capturing these moments before they fade. Not the conversations themselves, which feel too private to transcribe, but fragments. The way shadows move across Dean's face when we're stopped under a streetlight. The curve of his hand as it rests on the gear shift. The particular quality of silence that fills the car when one of us has said something that matters. Marcus notices the sketches, calls them artistic like he always does, but now there's a question in his voice that wasn't there before. He asks if I'm thinking about switching majors, maybe taking some art classes, and I deflect by asking about his girlfriend and her upcoming visit. It works, but I catch him looking at my notebook sometimes when he thinks I'm not paying attention. The thing that unsettles me most is how Dean has started to change around other people. Not dramatically, not in ways anyone else would notice, but I see it. The easy laughter that used to come so naturally now sounds slightly forced. The casual flirtation with girls who approach him at parties feels more like performance than genuine interest. And sometimes, when he thinks no one is looking, I catch him watching me with an expression I can't decipher. In the locker room, surrounded by the usual chaos of post-practice conversation, Dean maintains his reputation effortlessly. He talks about girls with the same casual confidence he always has, mentions dates and parties and phone numbers with practiced ease. But there's something hollow about it now, like he's reciting lines from a script he's memorized but no longer believes in. The contradiction becomes a constant source of tension for me. The Dean who drives me home, who shares his fears about the future and listens to mine, who creates these intimate spaces where vulnerability feels safe, seems like a different person from the one who jokes with teammates about his latest conquest. I begin to question everything. Is the intimacy real, or am I projecting my own feelings onto moments that mean nothing to him? Are these car rides as significant as they feel to me, or just convenient transportation that I've inflated into something meaningful? The doubt eats at me during the long hours I spend in my dorm room. Textbooks open but unread on my desk. I replay conversations looking for clues, analyze the tone of his voice when he says my name, measure the space between us when we're sitting in his parked car. Every gesture becomes a puzzle I'm trying to solve, every glance a message I'm trying to decode. But then there are moments that cut through all my uncertainty. Like the night Dean reaches across the center console to adjust my seatbelt, his fingers brushing my shoulder in the process, and the touch lingers just a second longer than necessary. Or the evening when he asks about a scar on my forearm, and when I tell him the story, he listens with such focused attention that I feel like I'm the only person in the world. These moments accumulate like evidence of something I'm afraid to name. They build a case for possibilities I've trained myself not to consider, create a foundation of hope that feels simultaneously thrilling and dangerous. Because hope, I'm learning, is the most terrifying emotion of all. Hope makes you believe that the way someone looks at you might mean something. Hope makes you think that maybe you're not alone in feeling this gravitational pull that seems to grow stronger every day. So I continue writing with Dean, continue sketching fragments in my notebook, continue living in the space between certainty and possibility. And with each passing day, that space becomes both more comfortable and more unbearable, a place where I can exist as long as nothing changes, as long as neither of us says the words that would make this real. 3 weeks into our new routine, everything changes on a Tuesday night in October. Practice had been brutal. Coach Jenkins ran us through defensive drills until our legs shook, then made us scrimmage full court for another hour when he didn't like our effort. By the time we dragged ourselves to the locker room, half the team could barely speak. Dean looked as exhausted as I felt, his usual post-practice energy completely drained, dark circles under his eyes that I'd been noticing more often lately. The ride starts in familiar silence. Dean drives slowly, more carefully than usual, and I can see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw keeps clenching and releasing like he's fighting some internal battle. We take the long route automatically now, past the campus boundaries and onto the country roads that have become our refuge from the world. But tonight feels different. The silence isn't comfortable like it usually is. It's heavy, charged with something that makes the air in the car feel thick and hard to breathe. Dean's fingers tap against the steering wheel in that nervous pattern I've memorized, but the rhythm is faster now, more urgent. When I glance at his profile on the dashboard light, I can see a muscle jumping in his cheek. We're about 10 minutes from town when Dean suddenly pulls over. It's not like last time, not a gentle drift to the shoulder. This is abrupt, almost violent, the car lurching as he yanks the wheel to the right and hits the brakes harder than necessary. Gravel sprays under the tires as we come to a stop on a stretch of road I don't recognize, darker and more isolated than our usual routes. The headlights illuminate a wall of trees ahead of us, their branches creating shadows that dance across the windshield. Dean doesn't turn off the engine, but he shifts in a park and just sits there, both hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles have gone white. His breathing is quick and shallow, like he's just finished running sprints, and I can see his chest rising and falling in my peripheral vision. I start to ask what's wrong, but before I can get the words out, Dean's hand shoots across the center console and wraps around my wrist. Just like that night weeks ago, but different this time. More desperate, more intentional. His fingers circle my wrist completely, thumb pressing against my pulse point, and I can feel the slight tremor in his grip that he's trying to hide. The silence stretches between us, taut and fragile. I can hear everything in the stillness. The idle of the engine, the rustle of leaves against the windows, the sound of our breathing that seems too loud in the enclosed space of the car. Dean's thumb moves against my wrist, not quite stroking but not quite still, and the sensation shoots up my arm like electricity. When I turn to look at him, really look at him, his eyes are already on my face. In the green glow of the dashboard lights, his expression is raw, unguarded in a way I've never seen before. There's something wild in his eyes, something that looks like panic and longing and fear all mixed together. His voice, when it finally comes, is barely above a whisper. "I don't know what I'm doing," he says, and the words sound like they're being torn from somewhere deep in his chest. His grip on my wrist tightens, not painfully, but with an intensity that makes my breath catch. I want to say something, anything, to fill the space his confession has opened between us. But my throat feels closed, and my heart is beating so hard I'm sure he can feel it through my pulse. This is the moment I've been both hoping for and dreading, the moment when the careful distance we've maintained finally collapses. Dean's free hand moves to the steering wheel, then away, then back again like he can't figure out what to do with it. His eyes search my face, looking for something I'm not sure I know how to give him. Permission, maybe, or understanding, or just some sign that I'm not about to pull away and pretend this isn't happening. For a second that stretches into eternity, Dean leans toward me. Just slightly, just enough that I can smell his cologne mixed with a lingering scent of practiced sweat, just enough that I can see the individual lashes framing his eyes. The space between us shrinks until I can feel the warmth radiating from his skin, until our breathing seems to sync up without either of us meaning for it to happen. The moment hangs there, suspended like a soap bubble that might burst at any second. I can see the war playing out across Dean's features, the pull between what he wants and what he thinks he should want, between the truth of this moment and the performance he maintains everywhere else. His eyes flicker down to my mouth, then back up, and I feel something fundamental shift in the air around us. But then, as suddenly as he leaned in, Dean pulls back. Not completely, not enough to break the connection of his hand on my wrist, but enough to restore some distance, some safety. His breathing is ragged, and when he speaks again, his voice shakes with something that might be relief or might be regret. "I should take you home," he says, but he doesn't move to put the car in drive. Instead, he sits there, thumb still moving against my pulse, eyes still searching my face like he's trying to memorize it. The unspoken truth finally cracks open between us, not in words, but in the weight of what almost happened. In the way he's touching me, in the way he can't quite meet my eyes, in the way the air in the car feels different now, charged with acknowledgement of something we've both been carrying. When Dean finally lets go of my wrist and shifts the car back into drive, my skin continues to burn where his fingers were. Not with pain, but with the knowledge that whatever this is between us, I'm not imagining it. Dean feels it too, even if he can't name it, even if it terrifies him as much as it terrifies me. The days after that night in the car become a slow agony of avoidance. I know what I witnessed in Dean's eyes, know what his trembling grip and whispered confession meant, but the knowing makes everything worse instead of better. Because now I have to live with the certainty that this thing between us is real, while also living with the equal certainty that Dean isn't ready for it to be real. I start making excuses. Tell him I have to stay late in the library, that I'm catching rides with other teammates, that I need to walk home for the exercise. Each excuse feels like a small death, but I don't know how else to protect myself from the limbo we've created. Dean accepts my reasons without argument, but I catch him watching me during practice with an expression that looks like confusion mixed with hurt. The space I'm trying to create between us only makes me more aware of how much space he usually occupies in my life. Without our evening drives, my routine feels hollow. I sit in my dorm room attempting to focus on homework while Marcus plays video games, but my mind wanders to what Dean is doing, whether he's driving those back roads alone now, whether he thinks about me when he adjusts his rearview mirror out of habit. My notebook fills with different kinds of sketches now. Not fragments of Dean's hands or profile, but empty spaces. Car seats without passengers. Steering wheels with no hands gripping them. I'm drawing absence, trying to capture the shape of what I'm giving up. 2 weeks pass in this careful choreography of distance before Dean corners me after practice. I'm deliberately taking my time packing my gym bag, waiting for the locker room to clear out so I can avoid the usual offers of rides home. But when I finally look up, Dean is there, leaning against the row of lockers across from me with his arms crossed. Most of the team has left, and the space feels too quiet, too intimate for what I know is coming. He asks why I'm avoiding him, and his voice carries a sharpness I've rarely heard from him. Not anger exactly, but frustration worn thin by 2 weeks of my careful evasions. When I try to deflect, to insist I'm not avoiding him, just busy with classes, he steps closer, and the familiar scent of his cologne makes my chest tight. "You're lying," he says, and the directness of it catches me off guard. Dean has never been confrontational with me before, never pushed when I've pulled away. But something in his posture tells me he's done with careful distance, done with pretending this isn't happening between us. The confrontation I've been dreading finally spills out in the echoing space of the empty locker room. I find myself admitting things I never meant to say, words tumbling out like they've been building pressure behind a dam that finally burst. I tell him I can't keep living in the space between what is and what might be. Can't keep riding in his car and pretending I don't feel the electricity when he touches me. Can't keep watching him perform straightness during the day and then share his deepest secrets with me at night. Dean listens without interrupting, his face cycling through expressions I can't read. When I finally run out of words, when the silence stretches between us heavy with everything I've just confessed, he sinks onto the bench behind him like his legs won't hold him anymore. His response, when it comes, is raw and honest in a way that makes my heart ache. He tells me he doesn't know how to reconcile who he's supposed to be with what he feels when he's with me. Doesn't know how to be the person everyone expects him to be while also being the person who wants to drive back roads forever just to keep talking to me. He's terrified, he says, of what it means that he looks forward to our conversations more than anything else in his life, that he's started measuring his days by whether he'll see me. The admission hangs between us like something fragile and precious. For a moment, I think this might be it, the breakthrough that transforms everything. But then Dean's expression shifts, becomes guarded again, and I can see him pulling back even as he sits right in front of me. He can't, he says finally, can't risk what it would mean, what people would think, what it would do to his family, his future, everything he's built his identity around. The words come out stilted, like he's rehearsed them, like he's trying to convince himself as much as me. The choice crystallizes in that moment with brutal clarity. I can either keep orbiting Dean's confusion, accepting whatever scraps of intimacy he's willing to give while he figures out who he wants to be, or I can step away completely to preserve what's left of myself. The decision feels impossible and inevitable at the same time. Staying means more nights like the one in his car, more moments of almost but never quite, more hope that will slowly corrode into resentment. Leaving means losing the person who has become the center of my world, the one who listens when I talk about my childhood fears and remembers that I don't like mushrooms on pizza. I look at Dean sitting on that locker room bench, shoulders hunched with the weight of everything we've finally said out loud. And I realize that loving someone sometimes means making the choice they can't make themselves. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much to watch them tear themselves apart. Standing up feels like the hardest thing I've ever done, but I do it. I tell Dean I understand, that I don't blame him for not being ready, but that I can't keep living in this limbo. Can't keep hoping for something he's not able to give. The walk to the exit feels endless, each step echoing in the empty locker room like a countdown. I don't look back, but I can feel Dean's eyes on me, can sense the weight of everything we're both choosing to walk away from. The week that follows our confrontation passes in a strange, suspended quiet, like the aftermath of a storm when everything feels simultaneously broken and cleansed. I don't see Dean except in the peripheral spaces of my daily routine. Glimpses of him across the dining hall, the sound of his voice echoing from the gym when I'm already in the parking lot. We exist in the same world, but no longer occupy it together. Marcus notices the change without understanding it. He asks if I'm feeling okay, comments on how I've been staring out the window more than usual, suggests maybe I should talk to someone at the counseling center. His concern is genuine, but misplaced. I'm not depressed exactly, just learning how to exist in the space I've created by choosing myself over the possibility of something that was never quite real. My notebook changes during these days. Instead of fragments of Dean or empty spaces, I start sketching other things. The view from my dorm window at different times of day. My roommate's girlfriend laughing at something on his phone. The way late afternoon light falls across my textbooks. I'm teaching myself to notice the world beyond the narrow focus that Dean had become. It's Thursday evening when the rain starts. Not a gentle autumn drizzle, but a proper storm, the kind that turns campus walkways into rivers and sends everyone scurrying for cover. I'm at my desk attempting to write an essay on contemporary American literature when I hear the first drops against the window, followed quickly by the steady drumming that means it's settling in for the night. Marcus has gone to his girlfriend's place, leaving me alone with the sound of water against glass and the yellow glow of my desk lamp. I've been working for maybe an hour when movement outside catches my eye. A car has pulled up across the street from my building, headlights cutting through the sheets of rain that make everything beyond the window look like a watercolor painting left in the weather. I recognize the car before I can see who's driving it. Dean's beat-up blue sedan with the dent in the passenger door, windshield wipers moving in their familiar rhythm against the downpour. He's pulled up to the curb directly across from the main entrance to my building, close enough that I can make out his silhouette behind the wheel despite the rain and darkness. My first instinct is to step back from the window, to draw the curtains, and pretend I haven't seen him. But something keeps me there, watching as his car idles in the street while rain pounds against the roof and windows. The wipers move back and forth with mechanical precision, clearing the windshield only for it to be obscured again seconds later. He doesn't get out, doesn't turn off the engine, or make any move to approach the building. He just sits there, and I realize with a clarity that makes my chest tight that he's waiting. Waiting for me to come down, to cross the street through the rain and slide into the passenger seat like I have so many times before. Waiting for me to choose the comfort of our old routine over the uncertain territory of whatever comes next. I stand at my window for what feels like hours, but is probably only minutes, watching Dean's car in the rain and feeling the weight of the choice he's offering me without words. It would be so easy to grab my jacket and run downstairs, to pretend our confrontation in the locker room never happened, to slip back into the familiar pattern of evening drives and conversations that dance around the truth of what we feel. But I've learned something about myself in this week of careful distance. I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that the world doesn't end when you choose your own well-being over someone else's fear. I've learned that love sometimes means holding your ground, even when it would be easier to give in. On my desk, next to my half-finished essay, lies my notebook open to a sketch I completed earlier in the evening. Two hands almost touching, one wrapped around the other's wrist, drawn from memory of that night when everything changed between us. The details are precise because I've carried that moment with me every day since it happened, but I've drawn it now not as a wish, but as a record. Evidence of something beautiful that happened, something that mattered, even if it couldn't become what we both wanted it to be. I closed the notebook gently, not hiding the drawing, but preserving it, keeping it safe from the weather of my daily life. Then I stepped back from the window and returned to my desk, to my essay, to the work of building a life that exists independent of Dean's confusion and fear. Outside, the rain continues its steady percussion against the glass. I can still hear Dean's engine idling in the street, can picture him sitting behind the wheel, hands gripping the familiar surface as he decides whether to wait or leave. Part of me hopes he'll choose to wait forever, that he'll find the courage to turn off the engine and cross the space between his car and my building. But a larger part of me, the part that's been growing stronger each day since our confrontation, hopes he'll choose to drive away. Because I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in someone else's half measures. Sometimes choosing yourself isn't selfish, but necessary, not just for your own survival, but for the possibility that the person you love might eventually find the courage to choose themselves too. When I finally hear Dean's engine rev and the sound of his tires on wet pavement as he pulls away from the curb, I feel something I didn't expect. Not relief exactly, but a quiet strength, a sense that I've honored both what we had and what we couldn't have by refusing to settle for less than truth. The rain continues through the night, washing the streets clean, and I sleep better than I have in weeks.